This happened about 2 summers ago, right at the very end of August. My parents own a small cabin in Connecticut. It's nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a creaky screened-in porch, and some old furniture that's been there longer than I've been alive. But behind it, down a narrow dirt trail that winds through the trees, there's this small, hidden lake. I remember the timing so clearly because it was the last weekend I'd be at my parents' cabin before getting ready to head back to college. We used to go there as a family every summer, but as my siblings and I got older and began to move out of the house and to different states, everyone was a lot busier. It was that in-between stretch of the season where the nights start cooling off, but the days are still sticky, humid, and uncomfortable. The kind of weather where you want one last swim before fall officially sets in. This lake is small. I mean really small. It's not on any maps. There's no dock, no picnic benches, no sign of it being maintained. Just a patch of dark water surrounded by thick woods. Even in summer, it's rare to see anyone else out there. It's the kind of spot you only know about if someone tells you. I'd spend hours out there, floating on my back, swimming laps across the middle, letting the world pass me by. It's peaceful, almost like my quiet place. And that's what makes this story so unsettling to me. That afternoon, after an early dinner, I decided to go for what I knew would be my last swim of the season. The sun was starting to drop, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. The air smelled like pine and damp leaves, like summer was closing its door. When I reached the shore, the water looked like glass, perfectly smooth. I took my shirt off and headed for the water, the mud squishing cold between my toes. In the shallower sections, it felt cool, almost warm, like it had been cooked by the sun all day. But I could feel the temperature drop sharply the deeper I went. I've always felt that the best way to approach getting into colder water was to just jump right in, rather than inching yourself little by little. So once I got to about waist height, I jumped in head first and swam towards the middle. For a while, I just floated on my back, staring up at the fading light, listening to the crickets and the distant croak of frogs. It was calm. So calm, I almost drifted off. Then I noticed something. A ripple. It cut across the smooth surface a few yards away. Subtle. Almost easy to miss. At first, I thought it had to be a fish. But it didn't really make any sense. This lake isn't stocked. It's too shallow and murky for anything big to be living in it. My uncle and I would try to fish in here when I was a kid. Once I got older, I specifically remember him telling me he used to take me just to spend time with me. He never expected to catch anything. It wasn't a fish. It had to be something else. I rolled over, treading water, scanning the surface. But just like that, it went still again. Perfectly smooth. I laughed at myself. Here I was, alone in the middle of the lake, letting my brain play tricks on me. Then I heard it. A sound. Faint at first. Like bubbles surfacing. I scanned my surroundings. It wasn't the sound of a fish or a frog. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like someone screaming. Someone underwater. My heart began to race. What the hell was that? I tried to stay calm. I turned toward the shore and started swimming, slow, controlled strokes, reminding myself not to panic. But about halfway there, I heard it again. Louder this time. Closer. It sounded like a long exhale, directly beneath me. That's when instinct took over. I thrashed forward, arms heavy, heart pounding. You know that feeling of running upstairs after turning the lights off? Imagine that while trudging through dark, muddy water. Every second felt infinitely terrifying. I swam until my fingers scraped the muddy bottom, then stumbled up onto the bank, gasping for air, half expecting something to grab my ankle before I got out. When I turned back, the lake was black and still. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Just nerves. Maybe an animal I wasn't familiar with. My heartbeat started to slow as I rationalized it in my head. Just as I was about to convince myself I was crazy, I saw something that I will never forget. A pale hand clawed out of the water about 20 feet from the shoreline. Just as quickly as it appeared, it disappeared. Now I know what you're thinking. Run. But my first thought wasn't ghost or monster. My brain immediately thought back to the underwater screams I'd heard and connected the dots. Oh my God, someone's drowning. I didn't hesitate. I ran back into the water, swimming as fast as I could. I was already exhausted, but the thought that someone was drowning just a few feet away helped me power through. While I was making my way, vision shaking from my desperate swim strokes, I felt a rush of adrenaline as I saw the hand pop up again, before disappearing under, leaving only bubbles in its wake. The water was darker now, harder to see through. I dove under, eyes stinging, clawing through the murk. Nothing. Nobody. No movement except my own. I surfaced, gasping, spinning in circles. "Hello?" I shouted. "Where are you?" A stupid question, considering the person is underwater, but I can't explain the desperation I felt. Nothing. The lake was silent. The only ripples in the water coming from myself. I treaded water until my arms ached, scanning for bubbles, ripples, anything. But the surface stayed calm, as if nothing had ever disturbed it. Eventually, I tired out. I swam back to shore and sat there dripping, shivering in the cool dusk air. I stared at the lake for what felt like an hour, waiting for another splash, another hand, something. But nothing happened. As I sat on the shoreline, I tried to rationalize everything that transpired in my head. Was it a hand? Could it have been a stick? We have trees up here that have white bark, and I could have confused that for pale skin. How long could someone drown for? I'd been at the lake for at least 20 minutes before all of this occurred. I decided there was no way it could have been a person. The timeline doesn't match up. I kicked myself for overreacting, but I gave myself some grace. It all happened so quick. There was no time for me to think, and I still tried to do the right thing. Finally, I trudged back to the cabin. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured a pale hand breaking the surface of the lake. The next morning, when I stepped out onto the porch, I noticed something strange right away. The wood of the top step was streaked with mud. At first, I figured it was mine from the night before. But when I looked closer, I realized it didn't line up. They weren't my prints. They were larger, bare feet. I wear slides to the lake. The mud was still damp, like they'd been made only hours earlier. Footprints clear enough that I could make out the arch of the foot, the splay of the toes. I felt sick as I bent down and traced them with my eyes. They were leading up to the porch, from the woods, from the direction of the lake. I followed them, step by step, down the dirt trail, through the trees. My stomach was in knots. Sure enough, the trail ended at the water's edge. The last print half submerged in the shallows, as if someone had walked straight out of the lake in the middle of the night. That's when it hit me. Whatever I had seen out there, it wasn't drowning. It wasn't struggling. It had been surfacing. And sometime during the night, it had walked all the way up to my back door. My parents have since sold the cabin. I was the only sibling that used it anyways. And after that experience, I never went back. This happened last summer, toward the very end of August. My friends and I had gone to the town fair like we always did. It's a small fair, just a handful of rides, some food stands, and a few carnival games. But for a town our size, it feels like the biggest event of the year. It was me, Jessica, and Stephanie. We got there in the late afternoon. The smell of fried food hit us the second we walked through the gates. Corn dogs, funnel cakes, popcorn. Music blared from the rides. The kids were running everywhere, screaming, laughing, cotton candy smeared on their hands. We stayed all afternoon and were having a blast, enjoying rides, gossiping about the boys we saw, eating caramel corn and funnel cake until the sun went down. But there's something about fairgrounds after dark that changes that feeling. You can feel it in the air, even when everything looks the same. The music, the lights, the people, it becomes quieter, emptier, hollow. We had just finished getting off the Gravitron ride. If you've ever been to a town fair, you probably know what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't, it's a UFO-looking ride, totally enclosed. You climb inside and lay against the walls, which are slightly angled backward. Once you buckle in and the ride turns on, it spins faster and faster until you can barely move, pressed against the wall. We exited the ride, half nauseous but giggling our asses off from the fun. The crowds thinned slowly. The ride shut down one by one, and the whole place started to feel different. The tilt-a-whirl slowed to a stop. The carousel music cut off mid-song. Even the Ferris wheel stopped turning, and the glow of its bulbs dimmed to where you could see the little metal pieces humming brightly inside, slowly fading to dark. Most of the booths were being broken down by workers and placed into their white vans, and some of the rides were beginning to be disassembled. A few stragglers wandered toward the parking lot, moving in groups on their phones, oblivious to anything else around them, while small pockets of people hung by the remaining booths and games. That's when I noticed him. Not staring at us exactly. Not even in a way that drew attention. But he was there. A man, maybe in his late 20s or early 30s, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. I only noticed him because I dropped my keys, had to turn around to pick them up, and in doing so, I saw him out the corner of my eye. I wouldn't say he was following us exactly, not openly at least. He just always seemed to be around where we were. I had already had enough of the fair at that point. Stephanie wanted to stay a little longer and soak in the last few moments of the summer. I started to get this weird pit in my stomach, almost like a sense of deja vu. I knew I had to say something to my friends.
Do you see that guy?
I asked under my breath, trying not to draw attention.
Which one? Is he hot?
Stephanie asked, whirling around to look. I grabbed her arm, told her I'm being serious. I feel like this guy's following us. Jessica caught on to the guy quickly. She discreetly pointed him out to Steph. We laughed nervously, trying to convince ourselves it was nothing. We told ourselves we were imagining it. The air was different now, colder, like the warmth from the fair had been sucked out. It was around 10:30, and the loudspeaker announced last call. The fair was officially closing. The rides were all dark, and the few remaining people started drifting toward the parking lot. We decided to leave. My car was parked near the edge of the lot, close to the tree line. It was a decent stretch, maybe 100 yards from the nearest exit. My friends and I kept to the edges, sticking close to the trees and the light poles. Every few seconds, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, shifting from shadow to shadow. I felt safer being in the light. The downside was the brightness kept us from seeing into the shadows. We picked up our pace, not speaking a word. Each step felt heavy. The asphalt echoed under our shoes. Every now and then, the wind carried a faint metallic clang from the fairground, and my heart would jump. Halfway to the car, I saw him again. This time, he was closer than I realized. Behind a dark van, crouched just out of the light. I froze, my stomach dropping. My friends hadn't noticed him yet, and I didn't want to scream and draw attention to him. I whispered to them,
Keep walking. Don't look back.
We moved faster, practically jogging now, trying to convince ourselves it was nothing. But the panic was building. The sound of the footsteps behind the rows of cars to our left seemed to be picking up pace with us. When we were about 10 yards from the car, I saw a flicker of movement to my left. He had stepped out of the shadow of a van, and for a second, I thought he might have turned towards us. But then he froze again, blending back into the dark, like he didn't want to be seen. I fumbled with the keys, heart hammering, sweat on my palms. Stephanie let out this terrible, desperate cry for me to hurry up. In that moment, hearing her desperation, the danger just felt so much more real. Finally, the keys clicked. We threw the doors open and climbed in. I locked them before either of my friends could even sit fully, and we stayed silent, listening. At that moment, I realized something. Up until that final stretch, he hadn't made a sound. Not a single whisper, not a footstep out of place. He'd been following us the entire time, careful to stay hidden, never giving us a chance to notice, until just now, when we'd almost reached safety. Why? We started the engine, and I watched the edge of the lot through the windshield. I thought maybe he had gone back into the shadows. But as we pulled out, we saw him. He started running after our car, unnaturally fast, his body moving like a feral animal. We made a hard right onto the road, nearly clipping the stop sign, and drove away as fast as we could. We barely spoke the whole drive home. There's no way to describe that feeling. It's a combination of adrenaline, relief, and the certainty that someone had been watching us, following us, and could have stepped out at any moment. I dropped my friends off at their houses, and I started my drive back home. As I backed into my driveway lights attached to my garage flicked on, and it was that burst of light that made me see something I hadn't earlier. A message, written in the dust on my back windshield.
See you soon.
How was that possible? He hadn't reached my car as we pulled out. And even if he did, he couldn't have perfectly written a message like that. I started thinking. Then it hit me. He'd been tracking us since we arrived at the fair. He saw us pull in, followed us around for hours, without us even noticing. This message was preemptive. He knew we'd head back to my car. And I don't know if he wanted to scare us when we read it, and didn't expect to be seen, or he had something more sinister in mind. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know if it was a prank, or something more sinister. I went inside and locked all my doors and windows. I expected this guy to barge in at any moment, but it's been a year now and nothing. What gets me is he had plenty of opportunity while we were walking back to the car to do God knows what. All I know is that I'm happy I noticed him when I did. And I'm always going to be more aware of my surroundings. This story takes place when I was 17 years old. It was around Labor Day. The heat was finally starting to let up at night. The humid, sticky air of summer was just barely giving way to the crisp, earthy airs of fall. I grew up in a rural area, in what most people would call farm country. Fields stretched out in every direction. Rural roads, boxed in by acres of soybean, wheat, and corn. Mostly corn. One of those properties belonged to my friend Jake's family. His parents owned this huge 500-acre farm where they grew mostly corn, some wheat too. The property wasn't just cornfields though. They actually had a pretty sweet setup all the way in the back with a bonfire pit, tire swing, and a makeshift baseball field. It wasn't nearly the size of a real baseball field, but we used to play wiffle ball on it when we were younger. Nowadays, we just hang by the fire, drinking beers, trying to invite girls over, and messing around on the tire swing. A few of us had gathered for a small bonfire at the edge of Jake's property. We sat on logs and lawn chairs, tossing sticks into the flames, letting the warmth of the fire chase away the chill that comes with the night. We roasted hot dogs and s'mores, drinking and laughing away the night. One thing about this part of the property, it was between a big, long row of cornfields that led toward Jake's home, and a small wooded section adjacent to the street. We could hear the faint rustle of the tall stalks in the wind behind us. I started to get pretty tired. I don't know if it was the beer or just the long day I had, but I remember dreading walking back to Jake's because I let my tiredness get ahead of me. The walk back was always the worst part. At night, it was best to just cut through the short stretch of woods to the road and take the street back, as it's just one road back, pretty well lit, but it's really long. That's when Jake leaned back against a log, squinting toward the road.
Hey.
He said, his voice casual, but there was a hint of mischief in his tone.
We could just cut through the cornfields instead of walking the road back. It'll shave off like 15 minutes.
I laughed, thinking he was joking at first, but he was serious. He grinned, obviously pleased with the idea, like it was some adventure or secret shortcut only we knew about. And at first, With the dying fire still warm on our faces and the smell of smoke still in the air, it seemed harmless. Maybe even fun. Heck, maybe it will save 15 minutes. The house isn't directly on the corner of the street. It's more central to the property and a little further back from the road, so it definitely could be quicker. People started heading out, dumping their beers in the flame almost ceremoniously, while Jake and I quickly cleaned up the surrounding area. We did a good enough job and put the bag of garbage and recycling by the shed near the tire swing. We set off into the cornfields, moonlight shining bright on us. Once we actually entered the cornfields, though, that changed. It was dark. The kind of dark where you can barely see the person in front of you. It was strange, because we could still look up and see the lighted tops of the corn stalks, but it was almost like there was a barrier blocking the moonlight from penetrating. At first, it was kind of fun. We were laughing and shoving our way through the corn. The smell of the bonfire began to fade. We joked about ghosts in the corn, how old movies always had something sinister lurking in places like this. But after about 10 minutes, something started feeling off. I realized I had no idea where we were. Every row looked the same. The deeper we went, the quieter the night became. The crickets faded. The frogs stopped croaking. Even the wind through the stalks felt muted, like the world had shrunk down to just the two of us, alone in the field. That's when Jake stopped. I could hear him sucking a breath, his voice barely a whisper.
Did you hear that?
I froze. And yeah, I heard it. Footsteps. Not ours. Something moving just off to the side, rustling through the dry soil in rhythm with our steps, slow and deliberate. We stopped dead. The sound stopped too. We sat in the darkness, listening closely. My heart was beating so fast I could feel it in my ears. After what felt like forever, we started moving again, faster this time, shoving through the corn. Just as things started to feel somewhat normal again, we heard it. A long, steady breath. Not a sigh, not the wind. Someone was there with us. We stayed silent, bunched up together. I'll never forget what happened next. This awful, metallic sound echoed from the darkness, about 20 feet away, like someone sharpening a blade. And that was enough for us. We shoved through the field blindly, arms flailing, legs tangling in roots and uneven dirt. My shirt was soaked in sweat, my legs were pounding, but we kept running. At some point, I swear I felt something grab at my feet. I jumped and kicked and pushed Jake's back to move forward. Eventually, we stumbled out of the corn onto the road. We were gasping, lungs burning, hair sticking to our foreheads. We exchanged a look, one that I can't even really explain to this day. Almost like that actually happened, right? There was no time to talk, though. We ran the rest of the way home without stopping. I got a ride home from my older sister. She didn't ask me why I was sweating so much. Probably thought we were playing manhunt or something. I didn't sleep much that night. So many questions raced through my head about what happened. Who was that? What were they doing there? I must have eventually dozed off, because I woke up to Jake calling me the next morning. He said he wanted to go back. He insisted it was nothing, just a scare, maybe some kid playing a prank. I told him he was crazy, that I wasn't going to just wander into this gigantic cornfield to get lost again. He mentioned that in the daytime, everything is much easier to navigate, assuring me we would be fine. I declined. I told him whatever it was, I'm not interested. About an hour later, he called again, and I'll never forget the sound of his voice, shaken, almost trembling.
I found something.
I asked him what he meant. He told me there was a clearing in the middle of the corn. The stalks had been trampled down in a perfect circle, like someone had made a nest. And inside that circle, a Ziploc bag. He paused before speaking again, his voice shaking.
It was filled with pictures of us at the bonfire that night.
His parents were already reporting it to the police. They took the photos in as evidence, but nothing has come out of it so far. We never spoke about it much after that. His parents installed lights in the back of the property by the bonfire area, and even made a path for us to ride quads back and forth from the house. Still, every time I'd go to Jake's, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching, waiting for the next person to wander into the darkness.